There was a time when houses weren't just boxes with Wi-Fi. They were time capsules of ambition, decked out in eccentric shapes, elaborate trim, and sometimes even steel walls if you were feeling futuristic. Picture a tiny fortress with ornamental wooden fretwork so delicate it looks piped on, like frosting, or an 8-sided curiosity that practically dared the furniture to fit. Back in the early to mid-20th century, fearless homeowners embraced styles that blurred the line between art, adventure, and the occasional ill-advised splurge. Some looked stunning. Others, well, they were eye-catching in all the wrong ways. Maintenance nightmares, changing tastes, and a dash of neighborly side-eye helped send these designs to the great architectural attic. So, how did these once popular styles vanish from our blueprints? This is American Wonder Years, and today we're swinging open the creaky front door to reveal 10 old house styles no longer built today. Now, let's ring the doorbell of history and step inside. Number 10, Octagon Houses, 1950s to the 1900s, the 8-sided wonder. There was a time when home design got a little too obsessed with geometry. Enter the Octagon House, an 8-sided fever dream promoted by Orson Squire Fowler, a man who believed that roundish homes meant better airflow, more space, and a futuristic vibe. The logic wasn't terrible. These homes did maximize space while using fewer materials. Many even had rooftop cupolas to ventilate hot air naturally. But there was only one tiny issue. Furniture is square. People quickly realized that placing beds, couches, and shelves against an angled wall was annoying beyond belief. Then came the real deal breaker, resale value. No one wanted to buy a house that felt like a giant stop sign. By the early 1900s, the fad collapsed, and now surviving Octagon houses are mostly museums because living in one requires a commitment most people just don't have. Number 9, Shotgun Houses, 1800s to the 1920s. The straight shooter. Long, narrow, and built for efficiency, shotgun houses were the solution for urban housing in the 19th century. They were cheap, easy to build, and perfect for hot southern climates. Open both doors and you had instant ventilation. But here's the thing, privacy? Zero. Every room was lined up in a straight row. The bedroom? Directly visible from the front door. Conversations? Echoed down the hallway like a megaphone. If someone broke in, they could rob every single room in under 30 seconds without turning once. By the mid-1900s, housing trends shifted toward bigger homes with actual hallways, and shotgun houses started disappearing. Today, you'll find a few restored ones in historic neighborhoods where they're considered charming, but for modern home buyers who value personal space, this floor plan is about as outdated as listening to a rotary phone while cooking on an avocado green stove. Number 8. Lustron Homes, 1940s to the 1950s. The house that couldn't rust. After World War II, the housing market was desperate for quick, affordable homes. The solution? Lustron Houses. Prefab homes made entirely of steel. Walls, ceilings, even the closets were metal. Low maintenance, fireproof, and practically indestructible. Sounds perfect, right? Except it wasn't. The steel walls meant no nails, no hanging pictures, no customizing anything. If you wanted to decorate, you'd need industrial-strength magnets. And don't even think about moving a Lustron home once it's built. These things were basically mini battleships anchored to their foundation. Despite the hype, only about 2,500 were ever built before the Lustron Corporation collapsed. Today, a few remain as novelties, but the idea of a home that dents like a car and echoes like an empty warehouse never quite caught on. Turns out, people like their houses to feel a little less like living inside a giant appliance. Number 7. Gothic Revival Cottages, 1830s to the 1870s. The fairy tale that fizzled. Ever wanted to live in a storybook cottage with pointy windows, carved wood trim, and a front porch that looked stolen from a haunted dollhouse? That was the magic of Gothic Revival Cottages, a style that turned homes into mini medieval castles. Beautiful? Yes. Practical? Absolutely not. These homes were expensive to build with steep roofs that required constant maintenance and intricate wooden details that rotted faster than a forgotten loaf of bread. By the late 1800s, the Gothic Revival faded, replaced by bigger, more practical Victorians. Today, Surviving examples exist in historic districts where they still look like they belong in either a fairy tale or a horror movie. And honestly, that's kind of why people love them. Number 6. Second Empire, 1850s to the 1880s. The fancy flex. If houses had egos, Second Empire homes would be the ones humble bragging about their European vacations. Inspired by the mansions of Napoleon III's France, these homes had massive bay windows, elaborate moldings, and their signature feature, the mansard roof. This roof wasn't just for show, it snuck in an entire extra floor without breaking height restrictions. But it came at a cost, literally. Mansard roofs were expensive to maintain, and by the early 1900s, the elaborate Second Empire style was seen as too fussy. Today, the surviving ones either look majestic or haunted with no in-between. And if you see one being restored, pray for the homeowner's bank account. Number 5. Prairie School, 1890s to the 1920s. The house that blended in too well. Frank Lloyd Wright and his Prairie School architects wanted homes to blend into nature, not fight against it. The result? Low, horizontal homes with huge windows, open layouts, and deep overhangs, a style that felt at home on the American plains. These houses were modern before modern was modern. The interiors flowed naturally from one room to another with built-in furniture, natural materials, and earthy tones. Prairie homes were an artistic rebellion against the cluttered, overly decorated Victorians. So, why did they fade? Well, for all their beauty, they weren't practical. Their massive open spaces were hard to heat in winter, and their custom-built nature made them too expensive for mass production. By the 1920s, craftsman bungalows took over, offering similar simplicity but at a lower price. Today, prairie homes are rare architectural gems. The world might not have been ready for them then, but considering how much modern homes borrow from their design, maybe Wright was just too ahead of his time. Number 4. Tudor Revival, 1890s to the 1930s. The medieval LARP house. Ever wanted to live in a medieval English manor, but in Ohio? In the early 1900s, Americans were obsessed with bringing old-world charm to their neighborhoods. Tudor Revival homes had steeply pitched roofs, decorative half-timbering, stone chimneys, and arched doorways, basically houses that looked like they belonged in a Shakespearean play. They were elegant and dramatic, but here's the problem. Real wood warps, cracks, and demands constant upkeep. Those elaborate details weren't just for show, they were expensive maintenance nightmares. Then came World War II, and suddenly people weren't interested in fussy high-maintenance homes anymore. They wanted cleaner, more practical designs. By the 1950s, Tudors were out, and sleek minimalist homes were in. Today, Tudor Revival houses are mostly found in historic, old-money neighborhoods, where they still look like they belong next to castles, not strip malls. And honestly, that's kind of the appeal. Number 3. Queen Anne Victorians, 1880s to the 1910s. The maximalist dream. If over-the-top architecture had a poster child, it would be the Queen Anne Victorian. These houses weren't just homes, they were statements. Wraparound porches, towers, gingerbread trim, stained glass, bright colors. If it was decorative, it belonged on a Queen Anne. People in the late 1800s loved excess. Homes were intricate, whimsical, and borderline chaotic, with no two Queen Annes looking exactly alike. But as America moved into the 20th century, tastes changed. Suddenly, people were tired of dusting 5 miles of woodwork and maintaining elaborate, high-maintenance facades. Modernism was on the rise, and the less is more philosophy declared war on Victorian excess. By the 1920s, streamlined homes took over and Queen Anne's became relics of the past. Today, surviving ones are either beloved historic treasures or eerie horror movie sets. Either way, they'll never be boring. Number 2. Dutch Colonial, 1700s to the 1930s. The barn you could live in. Few house styles are as instantly recognizable as the Dutch Colonial, with its signature gambrel roof, a design that maximized attic space without making the house feel too tall. Early settlers built these homes in the 1600s and 1700s, and by the early 1900s, they made a major comeback during the Colonial Revival boom. The big appeal? They were cozy, practical, and full of charm. The gambrel roof allowed for extra living space upstairs, and their wide, overhanging eaves provided shade during hot summers. But by the 1940s, housing trends moved toward ranch-style homes, low, horizontal, and far easier to build quickly. New Dutch colonials stopped appearing, and the ones that remained slowly aged into history. Today, they're still prized for their nostalgia, but let's be honest, when's the last time you saw a brand new house with a barn roof? Exactly. Number 1. Mid-century futuristic homes, 1950s to the 1970s. When we tried to live in the future, bubble houses, flying saucer roofs, glass domes that made you feel like you were living inside a snow globe. Mid-century America was obsessed with the future, and home design got wild. Architects experimented with radical new materials, curved walls, and Jetsons-style aesthetics. The results? Some of the coolest, weirdest homes ever built, but they had one massive flaw. They weren't built for reality. Many of these futuristic homes were too impractical to last. Heating and cooling a dome-shaped house? A nightmare. Maintaining a home made entirely of experimental plastics? Disaster. And as much as people liked the idea of living in a sci-fi fantasy, they still wanted normal things, like closets, privacy, and roofs that didn't leak. By the 1970s, these homes disappeared faster than flying cars. But for a brief moment, we actually thought we'd be living in space-age dream houses. And honestly, that optimism was kind of beautiful. These homes weren't just design trends, they were cultural artifacts, a glimpse into a time when architecture wasn't afraid to be bold, ambitious, or just plain odd. Some deserved to fade, others, maybe we miss them. Just a little. Which one would you bring back? Drop your pick in the comments. And if you love diving into architectural nostalgia, subscribe to American Wonder Years, because there's plenty more history to explore. Thanks for rewinding with us. See you in the next one.